Hello, everybody. My name is Janice Gerbrandt, and I'm one of the hosts for the Professional Development Virtual Chapter. And so far with me today, I have Denny Cherry and I have Joey. Oh my goodness, Joey, how do you say your last name?
Tony.
Okay, thank you. And Karen will join us when she can. And we are going to talk about Speaker Idol. And so some of you may have seen Speaker Idol live at Summit, and for some of you this might be a theoretical. But Denny, could you tell us a bit about the background of Speaker Idol, just to get us started?
Yeah. So Speaker Idol started 5 years ago or so. I'm not actually sure.
I think
Um,
I think 2014 was the first. Was that the year that where you were still upstairs?
yes, I think so.
Okay. Yeah, I have a picture from that year.
Yeah. So yeah, that'll be 4 years then. Um, and the idea was we wanted a way to help get new speakers into Pass. One of the kind of the problems with Pass is we've always had the same speakers, or a lot of the speakers have been the same, and breaking into Pass as a new speaker at the summit has always been fairly difficult. So this was a way to get people into the summit as speakers, and get them in front of an audience or in front of the program committee without the program committee having the risk of giving them a full session, and then so we can see who's actually really good at this whole speaking thing, and then get them, a full session at the end of it, for whoever's the best. I
And to
wish
give credit, we took the idea from Tech Ed.
right, yeah, that was literally my next line. I'd love to say I came up with this idea, but I did steal it from the Microsoft Tech Ed conference, which is now dead and has been replaced with the Microsoft Ignite conference. Um, but they had kind of the similar format. They had an extra day to work with, and it's the 4 sessions. But we took what they had at Tech Ed and put it into the Ignite event, and it worked very well for what we're doing.
Okay, great. And did it take a lot to get past to let you do it?
I think I had to send them 2 emails. They really
Okay,
liked the idea.
I bet
Um,
they did.
Yeah, so they like the whole concept of, hey, get new blood into Pass, and get the community involved with the whole process, and how and getting all this up and running. And I think the part that they liked the most was they had nothing to do with it. All they had to do was just provide the speaking slot for the next year summit and 4 session rooms to have the event in.
And so this changes your week a little bit, doesn't it? Because between you usually have a pre-con and several sessions, and there's another event that you are involved with that week. And Speaker Idol, you must be running around pretty ragged.
Yeah. I know me and the judges, we usually end up with 6 or 7 things that we have to do just at pass. I think this year I've got 6 sessions, including a pre-con. Um, so it's a busy week for everybody, but I think it's worth it in the long run.
For sure.
Well, I've attended Speaker Idol several times in the audience, and I certainly think so.
Excellent.
So Joey, do you have you judged every year?
I have judged every year. Yeah, yes.
And
Yes.
do you enjoy it?
It is fun. I think it makes it. I think my favorite part about it is it makes me think about like my speaking efforts when I speak in public, and makes notes of things. When I was going to graduate school, I took some public speaking training, and I remember some of the stuff, and some of the stuff I've obviously forgotten, but it makes you really think about and focus on these little points. And especially seeing somebody give a 5 minute talk, it really, as a judge, lets you kind of focus on nuances. And a lot of times people will say we're really kind of complaining about little things, but when you're somebody's talking for 5 minutes, you really have a lot of focus on you. It's not like It's not like an hour talk where you'll not pay attention directly the whole time.
Oh, I hadn't even
So
thought of that. So for 5 minutes, you have everybody's full attention. That's terrible. Okay. Karen, hi. Did you make it online?
She is. I think she's still muted.
Oh, is she? Oh,
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
We can hear
yes,
you.
we
Perfect.
can hear you.
Thank you.
Hi, Karen.
Hi.
Can I ask you, why do you judge, and what do you like about it?
Well, so I liked about it because I thought it was a unique concept to get new speakers some stage experience. But to me, it's just another way of helping people feel comfortable speaking as opposed to, winning a competition so much, and to pass along a lot of the sort of speaking tips that we all like to tell people to do. We don't always follow them, but things like making sure your slides are readable from every place in the room, like things like that is something I'm hoping we can change how people approach making their own presentations, whether they're new or not.
Okay, well, now that you're all on, I'm going to, let's see if I can get, there we go. Just for the audience, I have bio slides for each of you. And so here's Denny, and Denny has a ton of technical and business experience, but as applicable to this webinar and his speaking, like Denny, you speak at like huge conferences, and you've been doing that for years and years, haven't you?
Yeah, so I've been doing, as far as speaking goes, I think I started speaking about 12 years ago, give or take. I've spoken at, obviously, the past summit for better part of 10 years now. I've also spoken at Tech Ed, where I think my record room size was 800 or 900 people in a room that would hold up to 1,200. So I've given some fairly, well-attended talks, and some conferences. I've spoken in front of some fairly large audiences at conferences. So the fairly big rooms, thankfully haven't been very much of a bother to me as I've been speaking at them and been in these large rooms.
Dirty little professional speaking secret. It's much easier to speak in a very large room than it is a small room.
Yes.
This is true.
And why is that?
You don't actually have to make eye contact with anyone.
Or all of them.
Or all of them.
And you can tolerate, it's easier to tolerate a guy in the third row snoring if you're in a big room.
Yeah. Also, in a very large room, there's probably lights on you, and you can't see anything past like the second row.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting. And Karen, so
Uh-huh.
Karen, you are also like you speak, and you speak on a lot of different topics, not just those of us at PASS would know you as. Is that
Yeah,
correct? Because
that's correct.
you're big into space.
Yeah. So, like, my speaking opportunities and the things that I do are usually about connecting people to some ideas that are important to me, and some of that is space, and some of that is data, and some of that specifically SQL Server. So, yeah, I'm kind of on the edge of all that, and to me, I feel like it gives me a lot of exposure to speakers who have a wide variety of styles and how they see things.
That's great. And Joey, likewise to you, you've been speaking for a long time, and do you teach as well?
I think I've taught with everybody on this call, so I think we all teach a little bit. I was a Microsoft certified trainer at some point, just because it was a customer requirement. But I think we have all taught, at least I've taught Azure training with everybody, with Denny and Karen on multiple continents.
Yeah.
Okay. And then here, just to prove that this started in 2014, here's a picture from that year. This must have been late because it looks dark outside. And from 20.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
the last session of of Friday is usually the finale.
Yeah.
If I remember right, that year, like this past was at a weird time of year, and so it got dark early because of that.
Okay. And then in 15, we must have been waiting for the big announcement. Are these the finalists from that year?
I don't.
Yeah, that is the finalist.
Okay.
Yeah, and Alan's talking.
Okay. Yeah. Everyone's
Yeah.
looking at him.
Yeah, I see Karen and Mark watching.
Okay. And here we go. The final from 16.
Yep,
That was the year that went. Yeah, he went to work for Microsoft like the next week, right?
Yeah.
No, Peter never worked for Microsoft. The first
Okay.
year, the winner from the first year went to work for Microsoft.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And last year, here we have, well, not the
I
best
think that
picture, but he's got the double sash, so you see that he's a finalist and now he's the winner. So that's
Yeah, I think that was me announcing the winner. Because Tom was the MC. Because Denny had to get run off and have brain surgery.
yes, and we're all really glad you're back, by the way.
Thank you.
Okay, so I do have a poll open. I'm just curious. So if anybody's online, or for the people who are listening, I don't know if I can see yet what your answers are, but if you could answer the poll in the first half of the session, then I'll be able to close up the poll. So I'm asking people whether they're going to apply this year or in a future year to be in Speaker Idol. And then I would like to ask you guys some questions. So Denny, how many applications do you get for Speaker Idol?
So it depends from year to year. Some years we get 40, 50. I think some years we get a smaller group, maybe 20 or 25 people will apply. It really just depends on what people are doing. If they're going to the summit, obviously that's kind of the first thing, since people do have to travel to Seattle to do this whole thing. But that after that is kind of an open thing of if people want to try throwing their hat in the ring. I know some people have applied for multiple years. I know Rob Volk, he threw his hat in the ring for a couple of years to see if he could win it. And yeah, so it really just depends on a lot of factors to how many people are going to submit to try to get in the competition.
Okay. And who do you think should apply?
I think I'll since nobody's going to answer, anybody who's got a little bit of speaking experience. I mean, you don't have to be an expert. I think our secret criteria for scoring is based on the number of times you've spoken or something like that. So if you've spoken a couple of times, maybe at your user group or at a code camp or any sort of local event or even a SQL Saturday, come talk at Speaker Idol. You're probably not going to get selected if you've never spoken before, so having some speaking experience will help. But yeah, it's 5 minutes. And I'm sure later we're going to talk about how hard it is to do a 5-minute talk, but it's not hard to put together content for a 5-minute talk.
Right. I'd throw in too, I'd love to see more women, people of color, other sort of non-traditional speakers, because I know that we have a good diversity set of all the people who attend PASS, but not so much who apply for Speaker Idol, at least in my experience. And I think it's because, especially for women, because I can speak to that, we'd rather not compete in public in front of other people. And so I'd say, I'd tell women that it's a fun competition. I mean, people take it seriously, but the goal is to have a lot of fun doing it and to do that as a group, not just a judge picking on someone. We're not quite American Idol yet.
So that leads me to something else I wanted to bring up is for people for whom English is not their first language, or even if their grasp on English is fantastic, but maybe they have an accent. Do you have any advice for them or comments for them?
So I think every year we've had at least one person who's not a native English speaker.
Well,
But
one of them made it to the finals last year. You weren't there, but and
okay,
and actually, well, yeah, we're not allowed to give out scores, but was really close. It was really close,
Yeah.
and yeah,
So, I mean, it's kind of the normal advice is if a speaker anywhere, even in a one-to-one interaction, is concerned maybe their accent is going to be a barrier, is to slow down talking, make sure you're speaking up. Even with a mic, sometimes you have to speak up or use a certain level of your voice throughout so that the mics pick up. But I think, as far as the judges go, I think we're a pretty experienced group of people that have spoken in a lot of countries where we're the ones with the accents. I don't think we really worry about that too much. I don't.
no,
yeah, I think
Okay, good.
I think Speaker Idol is probably one of the events that's probably the most open, and PASS in general is probably one of the events that's the most open to people with accents that aren't native English speakers or Native Americans talking at events. Because I know
Yeah.
we have, I mean, we've had people from all over the world give presentations. Obviously everything is in English, so you'll have to at least speak English to give a presentation. But that's pretty much the big requirement is knowing what you're talking about and being able to give the presentation. And after that, it's kind of up to you as to what you want to talk about and what you're going to give.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've seen contestants with a range of speaking experience. So some people get up there and maybe they've spoken in user groups more confidently, but when they get up, they've been nervous. And
Mm-hmm.
other people who totally not nervous, and I get the impression that they've spoken just a ton. And maybe not necessarily this kind of tech talk, but just in general. Maybe they talk all the time at work and do
Yeah.
demos or things like that that are not what we consider like a tech presentation for PASS. So I have a question. Can you be overqualified or underqualified? Because some of the really confident ones I don't know that they necessarily have an advantage.
So I'd say because they, like a lot of them, a lot of speakers everywhere, you can tell whether they've been to Toastmasters, whether they've been coached to speak using this style or that style. And I think that's all really good. But the speaker idol thing is more than just delivery. Well, delivery of your presentation is really important. It's things, what do your slides look like? And did you, between sessions, like if you're a semifinalist, did you take any of the advice to heart in some way as you competed in the final rounds?
agree. That's always a big one, and that's actually frequently a judging point in the finals. So if anybody is listening and makes it to the finals, if we give you feedback and you're in the finals, take that feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So about the presentation, as you mentioned, there's some challenges with putting together a 5-minute talk as opposed to a longer session. Can you guys talk to that?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Joe. You're going to say the same thing I do. So go ahead.
Yeah. Topic selection becomes really important. You're not going to. You kind of want to narrow your focus to either one broad concept or a very narrow technical concept. And if you try to cover too much in a 5-minute talk, like if you're trying to do a big architectural talk, you're never going to get your message across. So you want to kind of focus on something you can talk about and get the point across to a diverse and broad audience fairly quickly. And that doesn't mean you can't do something that's very high level and technical. We've seen that done successfully. And it also doesn't mean you can't do an abstract topic. We've also seen that done very successfully. It just means you have to pick something you can kind of articulate in 5 minutes, and you don't want to go on tangents on the side of your topic because you have 5 minutes. It's not like you have a whole lot of time.
Yeah. So don't take an hour-long presentation and try to cut it down to 5 minutes, which is, you can spot those a
Yeah.
mile away, 10,000 miles away, because, it's people just rushing through a whole bunch of slides. So we don't really care about how many slides are used, and if they're used effectively is much more important. And for me, if they're readable. But the real thing is that, you have to be able to figure out how to balance all those factors that are going on.
Yeah, I
Including
think.
time.
Yeah, when it comes to 5 minute talks, they are my least favorite length of talk to give, just as a presenter, because I can't talk for 5 minutes and keep my mouth shut at the end. Um, I will easily run over a 5 minute talk, just because it is only 5 minutes and I have a lot more content that I want to talk about. Um, some of my hour-long talks have evolved into 90-minute talks, um, because the product has changed, and so there's more stuff I want to try and cram into the talk, and I always end up running out of time towards the end, and I'll have to skip slides because while there's stuff I want to talk about, I want to finish on time, because I want to give the next presenter time to get ready for his talk or her talk, and I don't want to step on their toes as they're trying to get ready. Um, So because of that, I think the 5 minute talks can be difficult if you're not, really ready to give that actual 5 minute talk.
And sorry, I think the other thing to point out is that a 5 minute talk really provides you with a set of things that work really well. Like for me, a rant. You can rant about something that bugs you and make a funny talk. You can explain one single feature's options. I mean, you don't have time to
Yeah.
say, okay, this is PowerShell, what I'm showing you is PowerShell, and blah, blah, blah. And then we'll get down to running this code. Like, you really have to strip everything down to its essence. So, as Joey talked about topic selection, I'm thinking about the different sort of formats. So rants, a single how-to with some trade-offs. Trying to change someone's mind also can be a good one because you can really load it up and go fast. And then most of the other topics that you'll see at PASS are much too complex to do in 5 minutes.
Mm.
So don't do, index tuning, even though it's a popular topic, because you probably can't cover everything in 5 minutes.
Okay, and when it comes to a 5 minute talk, I think it would be very tempting to practice that thing over and over and over again because it only takes 5 minutes to practice it. Can you over practice?
I've never rehearsed a talk in my life.
I know.
Yeah, same problem. I've literally never practiced a talk in front of the camera, in front of a mirror. I know some people, it just doesn't work for me.
I take that back. The LinkedIn training I've done, some of them I have practiced once. So I don't think it's I don't think you can really over practice. I mean, the only potential flaw I would see with over practicing is you can get yourself worked up and more nervous, and you want to come across relaxed. That's really, I think, and that's something that took me a lot of time in speaking is to just be able to relax. It's at some point it all slowed down. I feel like I would always try to probably talk a little faster than I would ordinarily speak when I was presenting. And I think at some point it kind of all slowed down and kind of became natural to me. And you want to get to that point. And I think if you practice a lot, you might be able to work yourself into being kind of nervous and worried about that. And that would really be my big fear.
Yeah, and I think that like what I would practice is if you're one of the brave souls doing a demo in a 5 minute talk, which we've seen people do really well and other people not so well, but you should practice that over and
Mhm.
over and over so that you're not hunting or searching, and you should know all the ways that your demo can go wrong. You should have possible outcomes pre-baked. Like all of the things that we would normally give advice for a 1-hour talk is just a million times more important during a 5-minute talk. So if you have a demo in every talk, you should have already practiced how to say, oh, my demo's not working. Let's now talk about this.
Yeah.
Those sort of things. You can't over practice that sort of thing, like how you're going to respond when things go wrong, and just about generally things that you physically have to do while you're doing this, you should practice that.
So speaking of the things you physically have to do, what are the things that physically has to happen when people go up on stage? Because it seems to me there's always a minute of kerfuffle where there's changing mics and laptops and things like that. How do you prepare for, or how should a person, or what should a person be prepared for?
I would say always bring 2 laptops, but that's just me, and I'm just overly paranoid. Because sometimes laptops don't work on the projector in the room, and we had that happen last year. So if you're speaking in Speaker Idle, you'll get a speaker badge or a speaker tag on your badge, which means you can go into the speaker ready room, where PASS has one of the normal projectors that you'll use. Last year we had that happen, and the speaker said, he swore up and down that he had tested it, and it just wouldn't project in the room we were in for whatever reason. So having a spare laptop, while extreme, is always a good thing. I always travel with 2 when I'm speaking.
And friends with them. Friends with those as well.
Yeah.
Because we've borrowed each other's laptops before at the last minute, I'm pretty sure.
And making sure if you have a demo that it's portable and easy, or that it's on your friend's laptop or in a VM in Azure or something you can easily get to.
Yeah.
And then the part you mentioned about the microphone, I'll speak from a guy's perspective, and then I'll ask Karen to you. The big thing with a mic is to make sure you're wearing a shirt, and I think this applies if you're a girl too. You're wearing a shirt that's kind of microphone compatible. For a guy, that means I like to wear a golf shirt because it's got the nice couple of buttons at the top where it's easy to connect a microphone. A button-down shirt will work as well because you have a nice palette there to clip a mic to. And yeah.
And I think that's the segue to what some special fashion advice from Karen. Words you never thought you'd hear. If you're going to be in any lavalier mic situation, so a mic that's pinned to your clothing, it works best to have a neckline that has something to clip to, and that your fabrics are heavier so that the weight of the mic doesn't pull your shirt collar away or pull your shirt down a bit. Those are all good things. And I think all of us, you try not to, have long hair or clothing that's going to brush against that mic, because then that's really irritating to the audience. And it's not terribly your fault, but if you do that enough times, you'll have audience members turned off too. The mic switching thing is also interesting because if they want you to hide the mic, typically I don't think we worry about that for Speaker Idle. But if they want you to hide the mic in your clothing and everything, that means you have to be able to get your hands under your clothing somehow and get wires passed through it. That can always be an interesting situation depending on what you're wearing.
Yeah, I don't think we've done that. The other thing I'll mention is sometimes they give you the option of the hand mic. You almost never ever want to do that except in an emergency.
Right.
Yeah, rule number 1, don't use a hand mic. I do for Speaker Idle only because we only have 2 lavaliers, and I want to do those for the people that are in the competition. So I'll use the hand mic because of that. But that's, I think, the only time I've ever used a hand mic when giving a presentation, and that's because I'm not doing a demo. Because if you've got the hand mic, you're trying to juggle between the mic and the laptop and talking to the audience, and things are going to fall apart really, really fast.
You realize you've just jinxed Speaker Idle for this year. But that is something that speakers need to be aware of. There's lavalier mics, there's handhelds, there's those clip over the ear things that don't work if you have glasses things.
Oh, I hate those.
Yeah, everybody hates them, but they're very common and highly produced. highly produced events. So you have to be prepared for that, because people who produce events like the invisibility of the over-the-ear kind of pink thing, that never really works. Um, but being familiar, like even though Denny's going to ask for lavalier and a hand mic and everything, you just never know what's going to be there when you show up.
Yeah.
Do the mics have to clip to your clothes? Like do they have the big thing that you often see clipped to the back of somebody's waistband? Is it that type?
So that's what it is. It's like a small battery pack transmitter on the end of a wire, and then the lavalier mic, which is just a little foam ball. All of that. Yeah, so that's the other thing. As a female, you're given this pack and you're expected to put it in your back pocket, but as we know, even if we have pants on, often the back pockets are fake or non-existent. So you have to have a way of securing this little pack that'll fall about waist level somewhere to your body. And if you wear like a dress, that's harder to do because the ones typically that you see at pass have a belt clip on them, which isn't going to work if you don't have a belt. So it's harder to deal with.
Yeah, I think one year one of the women in the competition didn't realize that she was going to be mic'd, and she had a dress on without a belt.
Yeah.
And she could hold the mic back because of that.
Yeah, so you either end up holding it in your hand, which is worse than, you just end up holding it in your hand, or in a produced environment, they'll put gaffing tape and tape it to the back of you, or help you slip it and under your clothing and tape it to other clothing that's under your clothing, or tape it to your body. But you can't do that in a lightning talk.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
That's really interesting. I would have had no idea.
Yeah, speaker. One of the interesting things is it's usually the first time most people have talked with a microphone. Everybody that's in the competition have given talks before, but it's usually at a code camp or a SQL Saturday where there's no mic.
Yeah.
The mic suddenly adds a very interesting dynamic to the situation because now you've got to worry about how you're turning and just dealing with mic in general.
And that's why wearing the proper clothing to get mic'd up is important, because if they have to rig something up to get it somewhere around you, it means it'll probably not respond well if you turn your head to look to your left or to your right. And that's always a consideration. The other thing, like the other tip I have about mics is if your organizer asks you to use it, you should use it. So a lot of speakers are like, no, I don't need one, I can project. But you can't. And people in the back of the room, people who have special needs, they're going to benefit from you having a mic on. So you should just wear the mic.
Now, well, on top of that, sometimes you have to because of the recording.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, even if you don't need it for the room, you'll still need it for the camera or for the recording equipment. Because like speaker idle is video cameraed, and there's a mic on the camera, but that mic is turned off. It's only whatever is picked up by the microphone that you're wearing is what's picked up and shown on the camera.
Right. And I think the other thing, so I guess we all have this phobia about mic issues. It's mic training issues. The other dreaded setup for a speaking engagement is you show up and your steps up a podium, then there's a table with the lectern, or what sometimes we call, what do we sometimes call it?
Oh, lectern.
No, that's the right term.
Yeah. The thing you stand at.
The thing you stand at. And
yeah.
That's the only place where the video wire and the internet cable and the power are.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to put your laptop there and give your whole talk with a stand mic or a mic that's permanently attached to that, and do your demos on that little lectern. Gee, Denny, I think we're changing the criteria to win this thing.
Speaker horror stories. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other one I'll say, and this doesn't really apply in the competition, but it applies overall, is always beware of the AV guy who wants to screw with your stuff like 2 minutes before your talk. That'll always happen. Just tell them to go away. And you can't tell them to go away hard enough. That just happened to me in India. And it happened to me last year at Summit during my pre-con when the AV guy managed to knock out the AV in the room for like 40 minutes. That was quite awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So we don't pull any tricks like this, but even we've had issues with the mic batteries and the mic cords and what people wear.
That's a good point, Karen. You should always, so almost every lavalier mic I've ever used has shown you the battery status on the
Yeah,
back, and it's got three. They all have like 3 bars.
yeah.
Don't start giving a talk if it doesn't have 3 bars.
And carry extra, what is it, AA batteries, most of
No,
them.
it's either AA or 9 volt.
Well, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the mic packs are usually 9 volts,
Oh,
and the sound guy should have extra batteries, or he better. That's his job.
yeah,
Um, and
yeah. Yeah.
you know, hopefully he's changing those batteries out every couple of sessions, even though they're not dead yet. But you never know.
Oh, great. So for a 5-minute talk, and I think some of you have said it doesn't matter how many, but really, how many slides should a 5-minute talk have?
It depends.
Somewhere between 2 and 20.
So one thing is, it could have 0 slides. I just want to point that out.
Yeah.
We don't have a requirement for slides, do we?
No.
Nope.
No, the only slide that is the one I provide, that's the only
Yeah.
mandatory slide, because that's the one that's got your name and your picture and stuff on it.
Yeah. Yeah, but you wouldn't have to have any. I've been to successful lightning talks or chalk talk competitions where people didn't have any slides and were very successful. I'd say that one's one you would need to practice to pull off well. And the other, unless you're using PowerPoint as an animation, like ideally, if you find yourself with more than 20, you're going to be in huge trouble. You know, like for me, for a 5-minute talk, I would say I personally would have 5 to 10.
And
I would
how
say-
long would you spend on introducing yourself out of that 5 minutes, or is that something that we can just get?
Not much.
No time at all, because
Yeah.
you get introduced by the judge, and that's a common mistake we see speakers and speaker idle make. Your introduction comes from the judge, so don't
Yeah.
introduce yourself. You're giving up time.
Skip the intro. That's the piece that I've tried to make as easy as possible by making it so you don't have to deal with it and waste time on it. So
Yeah.
you literally got all 5 minutes for whatever your talk is, not spending 30 seconds introducing yourself, which is a huge percentage of time of the 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I think somebody's brought this up already, but should anybody try to type code in a 5-minute talk?
Never type
type.
in any presentation.
In any presentation?
Yeah.
No.
So, I mean, there are tricks to make it look like that's what you're doing. I'll just say that. So it's not the actual action happening. You should be prepared to type your password. You know, it's very common for presenters to go to give your demo and realize that your connection's timed out or your login's timed out. And if you just always use a password manager, maybe that's not available, or you don't want to be showing all your passwords to people while you're trying to get logged in again. That's one place where you might be forced to type, is to log in again.
Yeah.
And I've seen judges that don't know their password.
Yeah.
So the format of the idle, I'm getting a couple good questions from the audience. Denny, maybe could you explain the process of idle, and how to get to the final idle and how to win?
Yeah. So the week is broken up into 4 sessions. So we got the first 3 sessions, which are the preliminary rounds, and then we got the finals on Friday afternoon. So the first 3 sessions are all going to be exactly the same. We have 12 contestants, so divide that by 3. We have 4 people per day. Each person gives a 5-minute lightning talk, and then the judges will give feedback as to what they liked, what they didn't like over the course of that 5-minute talk. At the end of those 4 sessions, the judges go away. They figure out who the winner is and who the runner-up is. And they'll come back and then they'll make that announcement. And while it doesn't seem like that should take an hour and 15 minutes, it does. Even though there's only like 20 minutes of actual content during that that speaker idol competition. So we do that 3 times, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday morning. And then the finals are the winners of the first 3 rounds, and then a wild card spot, which is one of the runners up for those 3 competitions. So those 4 people will then do the same thing again for the finals, and it can be a different slide deck, or it can be the same slide deck or talk. So if they don't want to do the same one, they can do a different one. They can do the same one, because the judges, as far as I know, are only critiquing based on what they're seeing, not based on the fact that it's a new talk. You're not getting, I don't
Right.
think extra points if it's a new talk.
There are no extra points.
Right. So once you're done presenting with those 4 sessions, the judges then pick a winner and they pick a runner-up, and the winner then presents at the next year's Past Summit.
And so they get like a whole year to worry about this, right? 364 days.
The upside and the downside of this is, the upside is you're the first speaker for the next year's summit. The downside is you have 12 months to panic about what you're going to talk about for the Past Summit, because you know you're a speaker.
So how should people prepare to be publicly judged?
Judges.
Question.
Yeah, that's a good question. The biggest thing I would say, and is, don't argue with the judges. And I don't mean to say like we're 100% knowing what we're doing, but it's just not a good look. And no, none of the feedback we're giving you is personal, like, ever. It's all kind of objective based on what you've done in front of us. And I'll generally say we're nice to people, even when we've had disasters. We've been nice.
Yeah, and like what I want to throw in is, I know, like, I can't imagine how awful that would. I mean, I've been on a speaker idol before, but I was also a very long time speaker for decades, so I wasn't as nervous, and the competition wasn't as important to me. But I get this, making yourself vulnerable for people to attack you, right? And some people do take some of our feedback personally. Some of our feedback conflicts because judges just be people, and people have different points of view on what makes a presentation better. But if you know in the back of your mind, the reason the judges are pointing something out, we're really doing it for the audience to say, hey, your fonts were too light colored and too small. I'm going to make fun of you because you didn't pay attention to all the comments that we just gave, which was your fonts are too small. So something like that is kind of, it's supposed to be more community learning, and people are willing to stand up and do their presentation so that we can do community learning.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So do you think people should approach it as, this is just me going out there to have fun, or is this me going out there and I really got to learn something in this 5 minutes?
Well, I mean, I also think as a speaker in Speaker Idol, it's a good way to improve your speaking, because you're going to learn something about, you're getting judged by a panel of people who've been speaking, around the world forever. And we're not going to, like Karen said, we're not going to just like harass anyone. You're getting good solid feedback that you're probably not really going to get anywhere else unless you hire a speaking coach.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So when people get up there to speak, everybody's going to have different styles. I'm curious, does being funny help?
It can, certainly. But it should be your own natural funny. It's hard to pull off humor, especially the kind that I love, that's based on nuance and everything. So there can be misunderstandings. But I do say this, like when I've coached other groups of people doing their first lightning talks, the time period really does lend itself to something a little offbeat. again, because it's only 5 minutes. Like if you were going to use interpretive dance for query tuning, doing that for 5 minutes isn't nearly as hard as trying to do something offbeat for a full hour or a 90-minute session. So, you know, that format, both the physical format of you jumping on a stage, doing something for 5 minutes, getting some feedback, and then leaving the stage, it lends itself to things like rants. Like, I'm here to convince you to stop using identities and start using GUIDs, or whatever it is you're going to do. Like, there are just certain sorts of styles of an approach that lend themselves more for the shorter session. So I always look forward to people who are doing something just a little bit different.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I wouldn't go out of your way to make jokes, but keeping it light is definitely a good thing, and have a sense of humor. And I mean, one thing to remember is jokes don't always work in an international audience and pass as an international conference, but just keep it light and try to have fun.
And don't go crazy on that. I'm trying to make my slides cute.
Yeah.
Because we haven't really run into that in Speaker Idol, but I have run into it with other speakers where there's just every slide's got some cute joke on it or a cute photo, but there's no content there. So I've always wondered, what's the point of the slides?
Hey, stop making fun of that Azure deck I did in Orange County.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have pet peeves? And I think anybody who's watched you guys judge knows that you have pet peeves. So can you tell us what your pet peeves are?
Mine is like bad movement, just because it was something when I was taking my speaking training in grad school that we were kind of coached out of. So it's like, if you're going to move, there's nothing wrong with moving on stage, but you want to be kind of, I hate to use the word dramatic, but you want to be like forceful in your movements. So you want to move to illustrate a point, or to engage a different part of the audience, but just kind of rocking back and forth on your feet really bothers me. One of the tricks I was taught to do that is to keep your legs together. So if you keep your legs together under your feet, or your feet together under your hips, you won't rock as much on stage. And while that's harder to pull off for a long talk, it's pretty easy for 5 minutes.
Yeah. So mine's always been fonts and readability, especially as I get older. So that, like, to me,
Karen's a big fan of gray on white slides.
No. So this does bring up a good point. What do you do if you're a speaker and you really want your audience to learn something, but the conference template has light gray letters on a white background? I mean, what I've always done with that is I've fixed it in my slides. And then sometimes it doesn't make it through review, but you know, that whole, no matter what, I want my slides to be readable. Otherwise, I wouldn't have spent any time making them. So for me, that's font size, it's high contrast, it's not using too many crazy fonts that when you hook it up to the projector, all of a sudden it's not working, or if you have to move to another machine, if the special fonts aren't there. So a lot of my comments tend to be about the readability of the slides.
Do contestants have to use the Summit slide deck?
So that's kind of interesting, because that rule changed last year. As speakers at Past Summit, we used to have to use the template, and I'm sure Karen's talking about other conferences when she was talking about awful templates. But as of last year, we only have to use the title slide and the sponsor slide at the end. So they're not really obligated to use the template.
I think Speaker Idol, we've always said you don't have to use the template, but if you can, it's great. And then last year that all went out the window. So I always provide it, just so you can get the horrible experience we all have of trying to apply a conference's theme to your slide deck, because it never goes according to plan, ever.
Yeah. I'd rather migrate a database from Oracle to SQL Server.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so now the opposite of a pet peeve, do you have soft spots for anything that people might do, or presentation styles or habits that they have?
Mm.
Ooh, not particularly that I can think of. I think one of the things I find I'm always a little bit harsher on than the other judges is timing. Because like the first year we did this, like it was like 5 minutes and you're done. Uh, in the subsequent years, I think we've been less harsh on if you go to like 5:06, and I don't necessarily agree with that, but it,
Um, yeah, so I'm a fan of harsh cutoff. So
yeah.
in a competition, actually, it is. I have run lightning talks where the speakers, when you tell them it's 5 minutes or 15, somewhere in between, they just see that as a guideline and they'll just keep going, which then impacts all the other speakers in that same slot, right?
Yeah.
So we do, when you say, so we'll let people continue speaking because we want them to self-manage their time, right? Whether that means watch or clock or something. But we deduct points when they go over or are severely short.
Yeah.
So while there's no gong, there's points.
So do people really have to self-manage their time, or is there like a timer that everybody sees, the same timer?
I'll let Denny tell this story because it was his call.
So this is one of the parts where you're at the same disadvantage that every other speaker at the Past Summit has, is that Past does not provide any sort of timer for you to figure out how long your session is. You just have to magically end on time. I know other conferences I've been at, like Ignite and Tech and stuff, they have, the red, yellow, green thing on the podium, and sometimes only the speaker can see it. That'll show, when you're almost out of time and when you're out of time. But Past doesn't have those, and so Speaker Idle doesn't have those. So you're really on your own for managing your own time. I know one of my biggest pet peeves, and unfortunately, I don't judge, so my opinion is mostly irrelevant or completely irrelevant. Is presentations that run over, because I've had to almost kick a presenter off the stage because they're not done with their talk and I'm
Yeah.
supposed to start. And I need time to like set my laptop up and make sure my AV is working and get the mic back on. So I've personally always considered running over to be a very bad thing, but I don't judge. So
I do. Very bad. Judge
Yeah.
poorly.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
going to advance the slide to show a couple resources that I prepared. The top link being this year's call for submissions on Denny's website. And so if anybody is wanting to see how to apply or needs the link, it is there. And there's also a couple of links to some blog posts from people that have competed in the competition in the past. And I'll just leave that up while we talk for the last couple minutes. What is the deadline to apply?
So I had to look this up, but I have it up just in case you ask this.
Okay, good.
September 8th at midnight Pacific time.
So does that give us
So
about a week and a half? Is that right?
today's the 30th, so about a week and 2 days. So the end. Sorry, so 11:59 p.m. on September 8th, to be specific, because we're
Unless Denny's in some other time zone that week, unless that suddenly changes.
no, because it's based on the time that Google puts in when you submit the submission, and that's set for Pacific time. I verified that, and that works.
I thought it was your phone, but
it was the first couple of years, but I fixed that because I travel, and I saw somebody actually did a submission during this presentation.
Oh, good. So how intense is the application process? Do you need a resume? Do you need like a full list of all the speaking engagements a person has ever had?
It's 3 screens, which total about 12 questions. And only one of them is what are your scores? And that one is basically it's a free form text box, and most people just put in, I've gotten 4s and 5s, 4s out of 5s or 5s out of 5s. I get 9s out of 10s. And that's pretty much all people put in there. And that's good enough. Most of the questions are like, what's your name? What's your email address? What's your cell phone number? I'm scrolling through the questions right now. How many events have you spoke at? Are you filling this out for yourself or somebody else? And then that's pretty much it.
Oh, can we nominate other people?
Yeah. So the form does have an option to nominate somebody else, and somebody actually did that this time as well. There's usually 1 or 2 people that nominate somebody else. And you can nominate them, and I'll email that person and kind of get their info as I'm going through the Excel sheet to make sure I've got everything so that I can properly pick the attendees.
And do people who are applying need to provide an abstract of their 5-minute talk?
Nope. I do not actually want to know what you're talking about. I don't even want to know if you're a BI person or a SQL person or a data architect, because all I'm going on is basically how good, can you talk and how many times have you talked? That's all I want to know personally. And then when it comes time for the actual speaker idol at the past summit, that should hopefully be the first time I'll see what you're actually talking about. Because I don't want to be biased against or for any specific kind of person based on what they do as a career. So I just want everyone's just people, and so that's all I want to be able to judge you on.
So what would you say to somebody who's listening who is considering applying or even who has applied and is going to be a contestant? Do you have any final words of advice or information?
Give a good talk and have fun. I mean, that's what this is all about is you're going to get great feedback from a panel of judges that I'll pick at some point. That you'll probably know roughly who they are. And you'll get feedback on what you're talking about, and hopefully you'll get some good information back from the judges, and have a good time, and enjoy past summit, and enjoy speaking, for a few minutes in front of a bunch of people that came to see you speak.
Yeah, and cheer you on.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe if there's any other questions from the audience, if you could throw them up right now, I'll ask. But if not, then we're going to wrap it up.
Perfect.
And while I wait, I just want to thank the 3 of you so much for coming on and answering our questions. And I'm looking forward to sitting in on at least a couple speaker idols this year.
Good.
Yeah, not a problem. Happy to come show up.
Yeah, everyone just go apply. Just apply.
Well, let me see if I can see anything from the poll. So from the poll, I don't know exactly how many people voted, but 18% said yes, I'm applying this year, and 64% said I'll consider applying in the future.
Good.
And then another 18% other. So I don't know what that means. Somebody was just information gathering.
People who like to raise their hands.
Yeah, people who like to raise their hand.
Okay, well, I think I don't see any other questions coming in. So that's good for today.
Right.
So again,
Thanks,
thank you everybody so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for setting this up. This is awesome.
Great.